Alright, so in this lesson we're going to be talking about Betty Friedan, who was a liberal philosopher and a feminist of the 20th century. Now, she was nowhere near as subversive as other feminists of the time like Simone de Beauvoir. We'll get more into how subversive she was when we do her specifically, and really have a look at her book, The Second Sex. But essentially, Betty Friedan marks a median point, so a more liberal interpretation of feminism of the 20th century, as opposed to the more socialist interpretations espoused by Simone de Beauvoir. Betty Friedan lived between 1921 and 2006, and she's pictured on the right. That's the most flattering photo I could find of her, so don't blame me. But essentially, this is going to be a short video as there is not as much to really write about it. I'll include this as a separate to the liberal actually no, I'll put this as part of the liberal course, although she can also be used if you're going to be talking about feminism in your essays. So let's get into it. Her views on feminism. Betty Friedan advocated for equality of opportunity for women, and she was a believer in the notion that women were disadvantaged in society by cultural channels. These cultural channels were the major institutions of the day, such as schools, organized religions, and the mainstream media and literature, that supposedly culturally conditioned women to think a particular way. She convinced women that it was irrational to adhere to their human nature, and thus their propensity to engage in relationships with men of higher status. So essentially discouraging women to marry above their means. The only good thing I can think of in there would be the advocacy for equality of opportunity. I know you have to remember Betty Friedan was American. We had a lot of that stuff in Britain in the 1800s with phenomenal figures such as Lydia Becker or Jessie Craigston or Miss Grey, some leading suffragists of the Victorian era, I believe under the Disraeli administration. Well, throughout it really, following the Corn Law, Anti-Corn Law League. But essentially, it's kind of, you can see the roots of it in classical liberalism, as she believes in equality of opportunities for women, and she believes that cultural channels can condition women to think in a particular way. So if you were going to be writing about this in an essay, you could kind of talk about how that is kind of similar to the idea of tabula rasa. So people are born as a blank slate and their entire personality is determined by society. That's what John Locke thinks. Obviously, in real life, it's a mixture between genetic differences and natural proclivities of the sexes, paired with cultural conditioning, so it's a bit of both. You're not born tabula rasa, but essentially you're born with certain proclivities, but you can essentially choose how to act. So society influences you and genetics, in summary. So how fundamental change would be brought about under the policies of Betty Friedan? Betty Friedan argued for the pursuit of legal equality for women by peaceful means, and she was a strong supporter of the US Constitution, which is a stark contrast to other feminists, as you likely know, who detest the US Constitution and they make a mockery of it. I know in the modern day it's popular for feminists to claim that the idea espoused by Thomas Jefferson that all men were created equal, once again that harkens back to the idea of tabula rasa, but essentially feminists nowadays use the idea of oh, it's an only man, so that's sexist. Obviously not. Back in that day, the word man referred to both males and females. It's the same issue that was involved with the 1832 Great Reform Act, as that replaced the word man in the terms of the Act regarding the franchise to male voters, which was essentially an error. I can go a lot into it, but like I said, I'll do it on the videos on the suffrage movement. But yeah, instead of it being man, which would include both sexes, it only includes male in the 1832 Great Reform Act. So that's just an inconsistency with modern feminism that you could potentially use in an essay. Friedan did not believe that Western society was dominated by a patriarchy, so a system dominated by men. You likely already know that. And she said that women were merely influenced to behave in a particular way due to societal pressures. So, like we said, that's partially true, but there are certain proclivities of women, such as they like to marry higher status men. Obviously, there are genetic reasons for that, and natural reasons, because it takes a lot of energy for a woman to conceive. It doesn't take much for a man, so they're going to be more picky and choosy. So, this is not entirely true in real life, as women have a natural proclivity to motherhood, and they tend to be more agreeable and tend to be higher in neuroticism. So it's a bit Jordan Petersonian there for you. And with regards to their natural proclivity to motherhood, if you are a female and young and you believe, well, it's not for me, I believe you probably should. One, because it's probably selfish not to, because someone needs to perpetuate this society, and I think it's rather selfish to end a line with yourself. But not only that, if you do not, by the age you're 30, you're far less likely to actually conceive, as you are less fertile, and essentially you'll get the genetic instincts known as the baby rabies in your 40s. So you likely already know that. I just thought it's a point to mention, because this video isn't very long. So, just to summarise, her most famous work was The Feminine Mystique, and her core ideas were equality of opportunity, individualism, cultural conditioning, rationalism, social constructionism, and liberal constitutionalism. So there you can kind of see her relation to classical liberalism, far more similar to a liberal than the socialists like Simone de Beauvoir. So if you're going to be talking about feminism in an essay, you can compare the different schools of thought between liberal and socialist feminists. I'll get on Simone de Beauvoir at another time. But anyway, that's it for Betty Friedan. Thank you.